Rocking horse possession. This story didn't happen to me but a friend of my family. To be specific, my father's friend from his teen years. I didn't believe them the first time my dad told me, but years after experiencing my own supernatural events, I am now a believer. Just a little background, my father and his friend John used to be interested into demonic and satanic things like music, symbols, and even so far as to attempting to make contact with otherworldly beings. I'm not a religious or spiritual person, but something about this story gives me the chills recalling it. My father told me one day him and John were trying to talk to demons. Yes, not just spirits, but beings claiming to be actual demons. According to my father, they were messing with one of this Ouija board, calling dark beings in his house in East Los Angeles. He said nothing really scary happened, and they actually enjoyed talking to the so-called demon until the one they spoke to. See, John said to my dad that they should try to reach a spirit that has been known to them in their research, in the darkness of the unknown. I honestly don't remember what he said it was called, but I remember it started with a Z. My dad said they asked it many questions about the past, present and future. He never told exactly what they were asking this being, but what he told me about the events right after they said goodbye. My father said as soon as it said goodbye, he heard something moving in his backyard. John and my dad got scared, most likely from the energy surrounding them. My father, always being the one who always had a curious mind, even till this day, wanted to see what was causing the noise. Him and John, walking quietly to the back door, while getting closer, able to hear clearly what the noise was. Each step made the movement sound like rocking and creaking. Right as my dad grasped the handle of the back door, they hear a sound that a horse would make riding around. Both now creeped out, but confused and more curious than ever. They opened the door and slowly walked out of the doorway. My father was the first one to notice it. He said that, as he laid his eyes on it, chills ran up his whole body. What he saw was an old toddler's rocking horse his family had for years. Yes, an old vintage rocking horse. It gave them the chills. It wasn't the rocking horse that scared them, but how it changed from the way they knew how it looked before. To them, the horse's eyes were a glowing blood red staring directly at them that were always a dark brown to my dad. While it rocked, slowed without any signs of slowing down, just a constant rock. I know what you're thinking, it could just be the wind. Well, that wasn't the case. My father said it was a hot summer night and not even a slight hint of wind. So they both turned back and locked the door as fast as they could. This continued for about 5 months. It creeped them out, but it was never anything too scary or harmful. That was until the incident that happened to John, the day after the rocking horse had suddenly stopped moving. This part of the story is my dad recounting the events that happened to John. One night, John and his girlfriend were talking on the phone as they did every night, just about random subjects and daily duties. At some point, they started talking about the supernatural and unknown. It was a very normal conversation to them. According to John's girlfriend, John was acting strange and somewhat paranoid talking about the subject that night. She said, slowly she started to hear voices from multiple beings. They started as distant whispers. She asked John if anyone else was home with him or in the same room, but John said no one was home. He did say he felt like he was being watched though. John said he had been feeling strange ever since him and my dad first saw the horse rocking. His girlfriend said it was at this point the distant whispers began to get louder and louder to a point that she thought it was a prank. Yet every time she asked John about the voices, he swore he didn't hear them. Till this day he denies hearing any voices, just the feeling of eyes on him and a deep dark energy around him. John's girlfriend kept hearing the voices get louder than John himself. She wasn't able to hear John at all anymore, just multiple voices talking fast. She said they didn't sound like English nor Spanish, which were the only languages they both only knew. Scared out of her mind, she hung up and called the police to be sent to John's house. She told them about what happened before John's voice stopped. She drove to John's house to make sure he was all right. She got there just as the police and paramedics were entering the house. She waited outside for news of John when she saw the paramedics pushing a stretcher toward the house. Her heart dropped and fear rose. Less than 5 minutes later, they were pushing him out with a pump to help him breathe. She ran to see him to make sure he was all right. The police stopped her feet before she got to him and asked why she was running towards him. She told them she's the person who called them to check on him and took a statement from her. After they told her that she might have saved his life, when he wasn't answering, they broke down the door and found John on the floor, convulsing with the phone in his hand still. John was perfectly fine after he woke the next day, but didn't remember much from the night before. The paramedics who helped him said he'd had a seizure, very mild, with no long-term effects. They estimated he stopped about 15 minutes after they got there. I'm glad to say John and my dad never had anything further happen, and both are still in good health. I don't know if I believe my father, but the way he speaks of those times, you can still hear the fear in his voice.